Welcome to our panel here. As Tracy told you, I'm Alan Walk. I am the chairman of the Second Screen Society. We also do shows. We work closely with Tracy. We collaborate. We're going to have a show at CES on that first Monday at the Encore Hotel from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., so y'all should come by that. And now I'm going to pass it on to Nico here. Oh, you need the mic.
Hi, I'm Nikos Iatropoulos. Thanks for coming. I know there are drinks being served outside. I'm the CEO of Lingospot. We do scene-level metadata and automatically tag live broadcasts.
I'm Jeremy Tillman, SVP of Product for Vigil. We have an entertainment marketing and loyalty program. I was running a company called Digit before acquisition by Vigil earlier this year.
Hey, I'm Tal Chalozin, CTO and co-founder of Innovid. We're a platform for agencies to take video commercials and put it on steroids and deliver it to every device.
I'm Lee Brenner. I'm Global Business Development and Media Partnerships Lead at Microsoft as part of a team that we just launched a product called Bing Pulse, which is a second screen audience engagement tool.
Hi, I'm Sharan Sklar. I'm Director of Business Development at Independent Television Service. We're a producer of independent media for PBS, and we launched a site called OVI, a real-time cinematic live social TV event organization.
And I'm Pete Scott with Turner Sports down in Atlanta, Georgia. I run emerging media across all of the sports properties that we operate, NBA, March Madness, and help entertainment and news to look out over the horizon for great companies and figure out how to operationalize them and bring them in to day-to-day operations.
Okay, well, let's get started. So if you read the description of the panel, you saw that it talks about something called screen stacking, this sort of distracted behavior people have of looking at their phones or iPads while the TV is playing. So first, I just wanted to address to the panel, and Pete, since you're all the way at the end, I'm going to start with you. Do we think that's really true? Do we think that phones and tablets have actually started a behavior that's, this behavior, or is it just a continuation of reading the newspaper, talking on the phone that we used to do before there was the internet?
For us in sports, it's a little different because everybody wants content that is sort of in relationship to what they're watching on the screen. I think we sort of want to make sure that any sort of companion app or any second screen app is additive to what's on television. So I think people do this. It's just a natural process. I think there's a bunch of things that we could be doing to make things more relatable, more targeted. Lingospot does some great stuff with content. So if they're talking about a particular content on the first screen, is there sort of immediate sort of sync content that can come to your second device at the same time? So yes, I would answer your question. Yes, people do it all the time. In sports, probably a little bit more, just because it's sort of more natural in the game breaks to be able to look for more and more data.
Anybody else want to take that one on? Okay.
Yeah, so I think part of it is it's part of our life. That's not only when we're watching TV. We're multitasking more frequently. We might be talking on the phone and checking our messages at the same time. I don't think in the past we were reading a newspaper while talking on the phone, so it's just a natural evolution. So I don't think it's a TV-specific phenomenon. It's something that we just do all the time. And from the data we've seen, there definitely is a situation where what we're doing relates to TV, but there's also a big chunk of that, probably half, if not more, where it doesn't directly relate, and then there's all sorts of variations in between. So.
And I think that there was a Nielsen study that said that there's 79% of people are using some sort of second screen, whether or not it's connected to the TV show or not, but they either have their phone next to them or using their tablet in some way, so that it's something that's clearly happening. And a lot of times you find people that are in the television that are trying to stop it from happening, but it's somewhat impossible at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, it's easy to put the term on it, but when I grew up, I did homework with the TV on in the background. With all the studies, like the average TV is on for 8 hours a day in the house, okay, but there's no way there's any person actually watching for 8 hours a day. So I think we're seeing a natural behavior, and now we're just replacing books, board games, et cetera, with iPhones and tablets. And I think the misbegotten race we've seen over the past couple of years is everybody just trying to shove apps into consumers' faces saying, oh, well, you're holding a phone, you better do our thing. And it's it's silly, because if I've got some procedure on in the background, I certainly barely care. I'm
Right.
doing some other activity. It's just noise, you know?
Right. Well, that brings up something interesting, and I'll let Tal and Sharan address this one. In my way of looking at it, there's, to Jeremy's point, there's sort of two ways of we watch TV in a very broad sense. We either kind of have it on as background noise because we're doing something else and it just kind of fills the silence, or we actually sit down to very purposely watch a show. There's a specific show that I want to watch. Maybe I've recorded it. Maybe I know it's on at 9 o'clock, and I sit down, and that's what I'm doing. And so how does that affect the
To be honest, I would say that well, I see it as a consumer, and also in our work at Innovid, is that content is the most important parameter that drives people to either pay attention or tune out and do something else. So we see the same thing with interactive ads, where the only reason, or one of the biggest reasons to drive people to actually interact, is that if the content is interesting and the content is good. And the exact same thing happens on, I think, on second screen. People will, if it's, I don't know, a true detective episode, I will pay 120% of my attention to everything is on screen. But if I'm watching the news, I can do other things and just listen.
Sharon, what are you thinking?
Well, I'd say two things. One is I think there's the lean back, you want to watch TV.
Could you put the mic a little bit closer? Yeah.
The lean in where you're participating in participatory television, where you're actually interacting with the content in some way. And then there's the checked out, where I have the TV on and I'm walking out of the room doing my dishes. And for us, I think the difference is when you can create an interactive experience that's meaningful for people, where you can, for example, show a film and have the filmmaker talk to your audience and give them something that they actually want to experience, whether it's connecting them to key influencers that they'd never touch otherwise, or putting content up against other, like curating content in ways that are interesting to them. That's when they start paying attention.
I want to jump in on that. I think the other thing that's interesting, specifically to your content, it's a lot, and Pete touched on this earlier, it's a lot of the nature of the content, right? You know, I used procedurals and just, you know, you really don't need a whole interactive thing with half of the shows on TV, because there's just nothing really more to take of some of the stories. With other stuff, whether it's kids programming, sports, where you know, really in-depth stuff like Game of Thrones, where you might want to really take it really far. And I think the other mistake that a lot of people make is deciding that there's this one rule of TV, and therefore that will apply to every show at every time with every demographic, because that's clearly not working, right?
Right. Well, I mean, you brought up an interesting stat. It was that study that I believe it was Nielsen that said 79% of people are using some sort of device while they're watching TV, and that really begat that whole second screen industry. Because everybody said, "Oh, wow, we can get these people to start doing our stuff because they already have the phone in their hand." But it seems that that's not really true, right? That people, how do you get somebody who's sort of half paying attention to the TV anyway and is using the phone to check Facebook or their email? Is it possible to get them to pay attention to something related to what's on TV, or are they just kind of checked out?
I mean, I would say if there's, from a television perspective, it's a way, if you can do it in a way that people, when they're responding or getting involved, they actually feel as if they're actually getting involved, opposed to, sending out a message or doing something on a second screen that nobody actually hears or no one says and no one sees it. It's just then really the television producers are trying to say, well, we think we're supposed to be doing this, we think we're supposed to put a hashtag on TV, but no one's actually paying attention to it and responding. So as long as there's some sort of interactivity from the people that are actually producing the television, I think that there's something there.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I think there's another distinction as well with the kind of work that we do is it's not just having someone comment, it's not just someone having them be there, but it's having them engaged in a real conversation. And I think conversation as opposed to commentary makes a big difference when people are engaged, whether it's on a second screen app talking with their friends or on a sutured first and second screen experience like our own, where they're actually driving a meaningful conversation between people, like the people who are out there having a drink. They want to connect to individuals.
I think ultimately we haven't figured out how to do all this on the first screen. So you go into someone's house and there's 5 remotes sitting on their, could be, for us, it might be 10 with all the different devices that we have. But I don't think we've done a good enough job to make the experience smooth on the first screen. So I think having the second screen and them using their mobile phone, it's just something they're used to doing. So it's no fault of them. It's just we haven't gotten them to move by putting the phone down and having the same interaction with something on the first screen. So when that day changes or that user behavior says, you know what, I'm going to put the phone down because all the things that I would be doing on the phone, I can do on the first screen. So I think we still have a lot of way. You know, there are a lot of people doing with connected TVs. Samsung's doing some cool stuff where you can overlay stats while you're watching a game, et cetera, et cetera. But I think until the behavior of someone putting the phone down and basically going to the first screen for all their information, and the remote that you use, or maybe you use your voice, you know. I know some people that use the Xbox as a way of changing channels. Right, they yell at their Xbox and then HDMI into, and they do it that way. So
That is my favorite thing in the world, to watch movies on the Xbox and say, Xbox pause, Xbox play. It just gives me this great feeling of command and
It's all
power.
about power. Yeah.
My version is my wife just tells me to change the channel, and she yells too, so it works every time. I'm quick on the button. I also want to caution, TV, first of all, is a great experience, right? Like the building block of television starts with something that works awesomely well for all people all of the time, never poorly. So every time all us cool companies try to throw technology at it, basically what we're doing is we're probably making the experience slightly worse until we can eventually figure out, per your point, how to get it a lot better. And I want to caution, are we doing things because we really want to and we think it should be neat for consumers, or are we helping do things? Like in sports, I live in San Francisco. I'm a fan of the Montreal Canadiens. Connecting with people in any way is awesome. But meanwhile, when I was spending all of last year finally watching Breaking Bad on my own schedule, the last thing I ever wanted to do was talk to anybody about that show. So we're really entering this era where the building block's awesome, and there's so many different ways we're all encountering it now that it's hard to have that this would be better thing. All those sports stats are awesome.
Anyone else? I mean, that's very interesting that, what you were saying about sort of when you were watching Breaking
Wasn't
Bad, because what's that?
What?
I said, no, that was very awesome what you were saying.
Wasn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
completely. You want to do this again?
I'll
Would we do
I'll
this
second
again? The Breaking Bad, because, that's sort of the flip of it, right? Is there's the shows that I'm very distracted by, and then there's the shows that I'm totally into and I don't want you to talk during. And to me, it seems to mirror offline behavior, right? If somebody walks in the room while I'm watching Game of Thrones and starts talking to me, my reaction is going to be, shh, I'm watching. Talk to me afterwards. So, how do you think this sort of notion got set up that all this stuff has to happen during the show instead of before it or after it? And is that a viable experience too? In other words, we sort of after the show, there'll be stuff on and a way to talk about it, but while it's on, it's just I want to be my own little world.
I think it also depends on the show. I mean, there are certain shows that people are dedicated to and they don't want to pay attention to. But if you're in the middle of watching a sports game and you are yelling at the television, or during politics or something else where you actually have sentiment and you actually want to somewhat engage with the television, there might be a way, then that's a place where a live second screen interaction would make sense, I think.
No, per Jeremy's point, there's not kind of a catch-all solution. It definitely needs to be aligned with the content itself. And
I also think people think linearly, where they go, well, I can't stop because I got to keep watching this. So they don't know, well, you can hit pause, you can breathe, maybe, say hello to your kid, put him to bed, then come back. But I think there is sort of this mindset still in some people's minds, right, that they have to watch the whole thing at one time. I'm shutting down. This is what they're going to do. So I still think people in their mind have been so trained to think of things linearly that they don't sort of have that concept to go, hey, it's okay. You can watch it somewhere else, or don't worry, it'll be there tomorrow. It's not going anywhere.
And actually, just to switch sides for a second, to speak in favor of interactivity, my best friend's wife is a big fan of the Housewives shows, the real whatever. And what's that?
Beverly Hills, kind of.
Whatever the things are. I can't make a joke as witty as Seth's Frozen one earlier, but it's whatever it is, it's terrible. And but there, half the experience is connect. What?
Do you judge her?
Yes, okay. I judge. And half the experience for her is actually connecting with friends during the show, and the OMG, I can't believe she said that, or whatever other crazy thing. That's actually what they want out of their experience. So now I don't know if there's an app they need, because texting works pretty well, but for them, there's a desire to connect, to find a person, to have a thing. For me, I had a buddy who was watching Breaking Bad somewhat near me, so I could always be like, are you on episode 7 yet? He's like, well, which one's that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, we can't, forget it. It's just not worth it. But I think there is that desire to connect, right?
No, I'm a big second screen user. Again, I'll just take my own experience, but the best second screen experience is just the browser and Twitter and getting the data that I just need. I don't need the broadcaster or the programmer to give me an app to force me to say you need to talk to only the people that are logged into this app and to do the thing that I kind of put you in a box. The internet is stronger than that.
We have this saying at Turner where everything's moved from prime time to my time, right? So that my time is the same on the internet. It's a perfect example. Don't tell me to download an app because I don't necessarily want you to force me to go this way. I just want an open field where I can do whatever I want to do. So again, that extends that my time where you can find the programming you want, but also on a digital extension as well.
I think that's a great point, but on the flip side, there is a tremendous amount of content out there. So if I'm going to go and try to, so the communication part I definitely agree on, that if you want to communicate with someone, you have their Twitter account or email, whatever you want to communicate. But if, when I was watching Breaking Bad, and I also binge watched way after everyone else had seen it, I would stop and do research on some of the, not for professional reasons, some of the chemical, I was just curious to see, is this real or is it, BS, made up? Yeah. I have my RV parked outside. So basically.
Don't take off your pants.
Yeah. No. But that's the kind of, if that information was available to me as a second screen, as a primary screen, doesn't matter.
But it is available to you. It's available to you on the internet.
Yeah, but I had to do
Wikipedia.
my own searching and
But
kind of, if someone
I don't believe that
pre-curated
there will ever be some type of a
And
special
isn't
app for
some
that.
of the fun too? That, actually hunting it down yourself and searching it rather than like, oh, here's the stuff that they gave me and I don't know if this is the best stuff or no. Really?
Not really.
Okay.
Not for me.
Ah, the moderator's mic. Okay. Sharon, you look like you were gonna say something.
I think that the second screen opportunity can also, can do a little bit of both sometimes. You can have, for example, you could have a presentation here right now, and you could watch it, and people could be quiet. You could pause the chat, then you could come back and then chat, depending on the way that the second screen experience is structured. So I think there's the potential for all of that.
No, that's interesting.
And if it, again, from a production standpoint, if it captures both data and gets, obviously there's a side where you want the audience to be engaged and it enhances their experience. But from the other side of it as well, if you can get something that really either captures data or helps with the production. I mean, we created, what we launched last week was basically during like a panel like this, you could be on your phones and be pulsing and basically judging us like a sentiment meter, like you would on during a debate.
Judging going on in this.
Right, but you could see on the screen it would be up. If I'm speaking, it would go dramatically down. Right, no one's interested in what I'm saying. But if someone else is speaking, it could go up, and you would know. All right, let's focus on that for the rest of the panel because that's what people are interested in. And you could do that for television too. You could with a poll, just like that.
So I think we've got a good consensus that it really is dependent on what the actual program is that's on the air, that different people react differently. One of the things that I've always been curious about, and we'll have to see how it plays out, is as we veer more and more towards binge watching and watching shows out of sequence, or after the fact. I mean, shows like Lost now are finding new audiences. They've been off the air for 5 years or something, and you've got whole new audiences coming up. What do you do to create stuff around that lets people sort of feel part of it? Whether it's looking up the chemical elements or things like that, where it's just something to think about. Is as we start, right now we've got this sort of golden age of television, and all these shows are going to be new to a new audience in 10 years from now. They're all shot on HD. They're not going to look dated the way 1980s or 1990s TV looks really dated now. Well, maybe compared to 4K, but the difference is not as stark. So how do you create? Just always something I've been fascinated with. How do you create experiences for that keep this stuff evergreen? 5 years, 10 years down the road, or is it just Is that not possible?
So, it's interesting, Lucille Ball, right? She got 9 million homes the other night where they re-aired the show and did you hear about that, right?
It was in color or something?
Yeah, put it in color, right? So we have TCM down at Turner, so we took Turner Classic Movies, and we're always trying to figure out how you match the tribes up with the different actors. Very much like sports, basically, right? So Cary Grant has his own, Lucille Ball has her own team. So I think it's our job as producers to figure out, okay, what's the next layer of interest? Is that going out to Wikipedia, getting more information? I think it's our obligation to, was it because they watched Lucille Ball because it's Lucy? Yes. Does it because it was colorized? Yes. So you had different variations of that show produced in different ways. So you offered that to the audience, and to a certain degree, whoever of the 9 million that it wanted to turn on the TV and watch Lucille Ball, a show that was on television years ago, there was enough of an interest, and that they produced it in such a way that they were able to garner more people to come see it.
Too bad it wasn't in 3D. I don't know what you really have to do to make content more evergreen. I mean, you made the comment, you opened with, people are now, for example, consuming Lost for the first time. Maybe that's enough, right? The fact that they're watching it is to me the interesting point. Like, how many people right now are off discovering The Wire, right? Still. If you haven't watched The Wire, watch The Wire. There's, like, Tal was saying before, the content is, as the saying goes, content is king. I don't know that you need to supplement, enhance, add, et cetera, to content that is inherently great. I think the question might be around all that middle tier stuff, where there's a lot of content that has smaller fan bases that maybe if it had more to it, maybe if there was more, whether it's supplemental experiences, in-depth, behind the scenes, whatever those featurettes need to be to engage in a post-real-time view. My wife and I are now watching last season's Top Chef. And at the end of every episode, it points to the online Top Chef kitchen thing, which looks really cool, but we don't dare go to the website because we know it'll tell us who won the season like that, right? So, that would be an example. And Bravo's been one of those kind of ahead networks too. So, I think just figuring out some of those things, like how do you create reveals, in-depth articles, researches, chemical compounds, without giving away the ending at the same time.
And I think there is an example in radio, Serial on This American Life.
I've spent way too late last night listening to that.
So I don't know if, I'm sure all of you, or I hope that all of you are listening to Serial, and this is...
I downloaded it. Does that count?
Okay, it's kind of halfway.
50%.
So there's nothing new there. It's a kind of detective story told episode by episode every week, and but they have been doing, I don't know if you saw it, but they've done a really cool second screen experience where on the site, I think serialpodcast.com, there's a lot of, every time that there is a new episode, they're creating a new map of all the different characters of this detective story and connecting all the dots between them and uploading photos and other stuff. So this is an example of, I don't know, bringing old content, radio content, back to life with a second screen experience.
Right, and that's cool because that'll be there then when somebody comes 10 years from now and wants to
100%.
put a show.
I think also with second screen experience, you can take work that is timely. So for example, you take work and you recontextualize it, and I think the second screen experience offers that opportunity. For example, actually at this moment, there's an movie screening going on, and they took a film called Every Mother's Son, which is about 3 men who died in the hands of the police in New York in the 90s. It's an old film. And they've taken it with PBS NewsHour and recontextualized it. So they're going to show that with clips around what's going on now to drive a conversation about race and justice. So it's a film that probably wouldn't have another life necessarily, or it might, but you get to recontextualize.
I think the other area, by the way, is kids programming. Like, when I watch, my kids are ready to do stuff with, my kids, first of all, would prefer to watch on the iPad, Netflix on the iPad over the TV in the same room that they can control with the Apple TV. Like, it's not a control issue. They'd actually prefer to hold the device. I actually think I'm excited to see what kids programming, especially PBS and others, do to really tell much more interactive stories to kids, because candidly, I'd rather them use like a math game app than just watch 22 minutes of whatever zombie mode, right? So I think that's an exciting area for this space.
Right. I mean, so one of the things, the age, to switch gears slightly, during the initial age of apps, when that all started, the idea was that whoever the app manufacturer was would come up with the content, so that it would be, it would be up to them to sort of bring you the recipes from Breaking Bad. But now what we're starting to see is the showrunners getting a lot more involved. So if I knew that the, that the showrunners of Breaking Bad were actually coming up with those, scientific formulas and whatnot, it would make it seem a little bit more organic to the show and all. And so how important do you think that is to have that whole involvement all the way through, where the staff is writing things up versus having sort of a third party who's just sort of pulling in things from Wikipedia?
Well, we've had this discussion with Pete a few times. I think there are a couple of issues. One is, where's the content coming from? There's a perception issue, which I don't think is that important. Once you have a good experience, you don't care who selected it. You'll continue sort of accessing that content. Where the content is coming from is important. If you're the programmer, you probably want your own content. I think at the end, I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the CNN Go app, where they are showing deeper news coverage. And that's, can I say how it's done? Is that public?
Magic.
Yeah, so that's editorially driven entirely. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a fully automated solution that's algorithmic. And the truth is probably somewhere in between, and it will vary by program. So in some cases, automation will be able to pull very good, deep content that's available, and that will enhance the experience. In other cases, you'll have to have someone to program it and create a lot of that content manually.
I have two girls, 11 and 9, and they're just Taylor Swift. She's amazing, right? And just think what she's done, right? She's taken the core of her music and basically taken it off Spotify. She's created an app. I don't know if any of you have seen this American Express app. You should download it. It's a mother. It's about 100 megs. But it allows you to watch her in the video that everybody's seen, but it allows you to be interactive. So she's extending the storyline, right? She's basically starting from here. You can go on to Vivo and basically sit there and watch all the behind the scenes. This is how I did this is how I did this. And it's sort of becoming, like you say, a showrunner's sort of perspective to say, how much can I squeeze this lemon to get as much sort of lemonade, so to speak, out of this as I can, because there's a thirst for it, or more importantly, technology has allowed us to extend it, right? So I think a lot of producers, they understand this world has changed, that these touch points are effective across all these devices. And so I think it's important for all of us to be considerate of that and to be thinking along those lines. How do I make this a deeper experience across multiple devices and target it to the crowds that you need it to?
Right, 'cause
I'll just add something. I think quality of writing is huge in this space. So when pre-acquisition, we've been doing some work with some synced content where the content was clearly being written by whoever just had some free time. And you could see the engagement level was low. And then you look at the stuff that USA did, right? With Jesse's right over there. Hi, Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
Showed dynamic engagement with their audience, right? And I can see it now with what we're doing at Vigil, where we have this some of these interactive game type of things, and the ones where, I can tell you that like when the best of our content people are writing content, they've seen it and they know the show and it's their favorite show, the engagement levels are vastly different than when they are assigned to a show that might not be the one like that they have a thing for. So, take that to the showrunners who really get the stuff. I think they are the ones with the best potential for creation.
Right. Because the flip of that, of course, is that you have the argument that users should be making this stuff, and you've got these fan communities and people sort of creating stuff around shows and doing stuff around shows, and it's this, who owns it? At what point do you sort of give up control? Or are they just two different experiences? And if you want to have the official showrunner experience, or if you just want to have, talk to other fans, it's sort of like, do you want to look at Twitter, or do you want to look at Tumblr?
Well, the end goal is probably the same, right? It's building the brand, whether it's with Taylor Swift. She wants her fans engaged with it. They're making their own videos or seeing the making of. It's still, all of it is now the Taylor Swift brand, opposed to in the past where it was, here's the end video, this is all you're going to get. You don't get to know anything more, but because of social media and the transparency aspect of what that brings to television production or celebrity or everything else, now if you embrace that side of it using new technologies, it'll make it the brand that much more robust.
Right, and you would have people making up their own extensions to the Taylor Swift video and putting them up online. I'm always shocked at how much that sort of stuff goes on. how dedicated to whether it's a song or a show people are and will do stuff.
Did you see the George Lucas Star Wars re-edit? If you haven't, there's the new Star Wars trailer. If you haven't seen it, go search for the George Lucas Star Wars trailer re-edit that some fans did. And I think it's awesome. We live in an era where the content companies, seem to be letting this happen, because very recently they didn't. Very recently there was massive shutdown on this stuff. Yes. And instead, only more people are now aware about the Star Wars movie. Sorry.
I think also when you talk about people getting engaged with the content, being able to do something with it and play with it, they're more authentically connected. They feel like it's theirs and they want to be a part of it.
Alan Wurtzel, I thought, by the way, she was just here, but Tracy runs, this is a great conference, but Alan Wurtzel, right, where he was showing his great NBC day today. That was just unbelievable stuff. And it just shows the fragmentation. And I just think, again, technology has made it where if a showrunner creates 7 pieces of content, and a guy wants to go dive through all that content, storylines, behind the scenes, photos, whatever it is, he can do that. But if he just wants to sit down and watch it, he can too. But we're taking care of all these audience members that are fans of this particular show. So I think it's a great time for you to be sort of a producer in production. Like he said, there's so many people that are producing interesting content, and you just have the ways to get as much content out, as much people as you need. And if they want to go and dabble in it, they can. If they don't, they can just stop at the first door, so to speak.
Right. So you had brought up the American Express owns that Taylor Swift which brings up the other point of all this is somebody's got to pay for it, right? So how do we work advertising into this? Is it, are we still looking at interruptive models and just making them sort of more interactive, or doing something with them? Is it branded experiences? What are you guys seeing? What do you think is going to be the sort of wave of the future, or what works? So Tal, I'm going to let you take this one since you're the advertising guy.
Yes, I'm the advertising guy. That's exciting.
Yes.
I think I'll just say the same thing that's said here before, is that content is king. It's the same thing in advertising. So it will work. A good advertising second screen or good advertising interactivity will work when the user gets an actual value from it. If I'm a big action sport fan and I'm seeing a Red Bull commercial and I can use my second screen device to watch more videos of X Games, this is awesome. If I'm seeing a JetBlue commercial and I can get a coupon for first bag checked free on my phone, saved on my phone. This is where I'm getting kind of the value exchange type of stuff, and we're seeing it over and over again. And this is where the only place that it actually works.
You guys hear about Grumpy Cat? The owner of Grumpy Cat supposedly, again, this is not fact checked by me, but somewhere on the internet it's been stated that has made about $100 million off Grumpy Cat. So if you have
I think that's a hoax. I can't believe it.
I can believe it. I mean, there's.
Somebody want to go to Snopes and look it up for us?
Waitress job.
There's a movie or
it
something
seems
coming.
plausible with the way that people are paying for content, sponsorships.
There's a massive Friskies partnership.
Sharing just one thing from what we're doing at Vigil, we can see that the brands want to connect with people who watch TV. There's just no debate that if we know that eyeballs are somewhere, brands want to come in the door and
Grab those eyeballs.
Yeah, car companies, Best Buy, all these. I mean, they come to us because they want the experience, but they're not stopping with us. You can ask the ad agency people. They're looking for places where there's just enough audiences to be doing these things. As long as there's people there and they're engaging in some way, their brand's willing. I mean, their brand's willing to support something as long as there's people being aware of it.
Anyone else? Okay. So what is, we'll go to the question that always comes up on these panels, which is, what is the second screen, right? Which is it? Is it, and is the phone, if everybody's kids are the good example, is the tablet suddenly going to become the first screen now that's the primary screen people watch it on, or is it just always a screen other than the one that we're using?
We were here at this conference last year, and we had a bunch of tablets and phones on our exhibit, and we're really talking about the second screen. And if you go now, you won't see any. I think it doesn't matter. People are accessing content. A second screen, by definition, means that there's a primary screen. So a TV Everywhere experience doesn't have a second screen unless you're watching on your tablet, and you have your phone next to it. I think what's important is that consumption of video, of TV, if we rename that, has been is now multi-platform, multi-screen, and people can, there are some demographic biases. So the kids, my son included, like to watch on a tablet versus a TV, but you can go from one to the other. So I think what it really comes down to is a secondary area of attention versus screen. So you have your primary attention, which not always is in that case either, but you have one area of attention, which is the TV, and then something else, which could be your computer, could be a tablet, could be being on the phone talking, it doesn't really matter.
Can't agree more. Again, going back to the serial example, listening to an audio and going to my computer to research more stuff, I call the computer as a second screen, even though it's not really second.
And you could say that second screens is terrible a misnomer for people being distracted while they watch TV, as social TV is a terrible misnomer for the fact that people like to talk about television. Like we just don't need the term, right?
Just the screen.
Well, what are we saying? Like if I'm avidly watching a show and that's all I'm doing, and I have a phone in my pocket, what did I do? Versus I'm avidly watching a show, pull up my phone and search for something on Wikipedia. Versus I have the TV on the background and I'm avidly using my phone to do some other thing. I still don't know why I need a label for any of those three activities, nor how they're relevant to any part of the TV business, to be very blunt. Like, they don't matter.
I think the only reason to have a label is in order to allow people to buy, for brands or other people to buy into it. You need to put it in a box. But I agree with you.
Lee, you're nodding, see.
Well, I was saying, it's also not just, for everyone sitting in the audience, if they have their phones out, is that their first screen at this point? Or is it really just about the content, the second aspect, second avenue of content that could be coming toward them, right? Where we are the first content, and they, whatever they have as their second, or maybe that's their first and they're not really paying attention to us.
That's true.
Possible.
No, I'm good.
Okay. So where is this stuff all heading then, right? We've got this, it's sort of nascent now. We're starting to see a lot of TV, we're starting to see a lot more of TV everywhere, of people just basically changing the way that they watch. There's this freedom that consumers have all of a sudden now. It's like I can watch what I want, when I want, and I feel much less constrained. I can expand the experience beyond just this 30 or 60 minute thing that's interrupted with all these commercials. So if you guys had a fast forward 5 years from now, what's different about the experience? What's the same? Just riff. Come on, Jeremy.
I think it's, again, Alan did a great job of presenting where eyeballs are going, and I think for all of us, the ratings are going down. They're not going up, but they're going down for a good reason, because people are basically watching the same content, potentially on other distribution mechanisms. Very fascinating, the C7 example that he gave, where there's actually a bunch of eyeballs they can't track right now, and they think that's anywhere between 1.1 million eyeballs. And I think for us, especially at Turner, I think we're looking at, Conan gets a 0.8, does really well, and Conan hasn't grown a 0.8. It's been very consistent over the last 5 or 6 years. And some people in the network go, God, we wish that was a little higher. But really, like in about a year and a half, that 0.8 is going to look pretty good because it's steady. They haven't gone anywhere. It's been a really nice, sort of solid 0.8. And I think all of us up here will start to look at it. We're like, 0.8, 0.6, we'll all start to look really, really good. So I think all of us have to sort of look at it like people are going to consume content in other places. Can we make it personalized? Can I go home and a TV will know exactly all the content I want? In some cases, that's already happening, where it will give me content waiting for me, waiting for my children. And I think that's where the world might get to, right? Where if you want that particular device in your house will start to suggest what you think you might like. I mean, technically Netflix is doing that already, where 70 to 80% of their video views are all done by recommendations. So I think it's all coming in that direction. And I think that's what you'll see. You might have like a little globe in your house, and it will have different names on the globe, and your daughter or son will hit it, and it will be all the content for him. And then another one might be for the dad, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where I think it's going for us.
Okay, so you've got the glass globe.
another thing that kind of on a different topic that I just can't wait for the day that it will happen is that we're not going to talk about different type of ways to access content, over the top, TV everywhere, mobile video, I don't know, in other ways. It will just be content, scheduled, on demand. It doesn't really matter. I will watch my show on whatever screen, whatever device, and whatever technology that it's delivered to me, but I couldn't care less what are the pipes and what's in the middle between me and the show.
I think what's going to be most interesting as I look at things in TV and the change today, beyond programmatic, for example, I think one of the areas is we're seeing all of the investment in original content right now. So Amazon's got shows, Microsoft's got shows, Yahoo has shows. I'm very curious, 5 years from now, we'll see how that all worked. We'll know, can an Amazon pull it off, right? Because right now we don't know. They've only renewed like 2 shows of their first couple of batches. Can a Microsoft pull it off? You know, when you have a console in 30 million or whatever, house, 30, 40, 60, 90 million?
Let's keep going.
Just everybody has an Xbox, and they all yell at it like Alan. And we're going to start seeing where are the limits on this. How many content producers do we support? And I'll then add to that by saying that we can either go in one or two directions. We're either going to see that it does work and the boundaries between producer and consumer of TV will be reduced, because you have 2 middlemen right now, namely the broadcasters and the pay TV operators, and that's at least one too many. Or we'll see that those experiments don't work and the economics are just too far out of whack to make high production cost shows with limited distribution vehicles. I think that's the fight, debate, discussion that we'll be looking at 3 to 5 years from now.
If we rewind 5 years, I think the last 5 years has really been about technology and have been about getting the smartphone and tablet penetrations there, IP delivery of video, getting the broadband, getting dynamic ad insertion. I think most of metadata, most of that has been 80% solved, if not more. And what I'm hopeful that the next 5 years will bring is metrics, which right now are not representative of what's actually happening, and then just a change in business models and legal framework that will allow a lot of these experiences to flourish. Because that's really, if you look across the board, all the experience we've been talking about, usually it's a legal or a rights issue or something that the advertisers don't like or the programmers don't like. So, those are things that usually take longer than 5 years, but let's see what happens.
So you're betting on lawyers to make our world better.
I didn't say I'm betting, I'm hoping.
I would say that I don't know if this will happen, but I am hopeful that it will happen, is that, all of these tools and technologies will give people the opportunity to have the kind of conversations that they want to have and not necessarily the conversations that we want them to have.
Mr. Brenner?
I think that's a great point. I think more and more people are going to be more responsive and want to direct the way. So the more personalization that it can be, the better. And people are clearly wanting to have more and more of a voice in what they watch, opposed to just happening at, I turn on the TV and it's being told to me, all right, well, here's what's available. If they want to be able to say, here are the things that are personalized for me, or that here's what I want to watch right now at any moment.
And what I thought was interesting today was it was kind of interesting, right, in our discussions about the agency owning everything. Like, did you notice that the conversation today was like, they're the gateway.
Yes.
Well, does it, like 4 years from now, 2 years from now, that gateway sort of starts to disappear because technology has enabled maybe users will be able to pick the advertisers they want to get a commercial inserted, maybe they'll have the choice where that disintermediary goes away.
Right.
Because it just seems to me it's so inefficient, right? You do these upfronts, everybody spends all their money, but it's like, that's so inefficient. That's so not the way, but it is intrinsic. So it is a large business. Everybody does well in it, but does the commoditization of technology sort of start to break those pieces up in a real fundamental way?
Yeah, I find that to be really, that was one of the more interesting things, talking about buying audiences instead of buying viewers, and how that can allow content with, I hate using the word content, how that allows programming with a very small audience to still succeed because you can sell things directly to that audience. Somebody was talking about, you could have a show with 8,000 viewers, but if they're all really into a specific thing and you have advertisers, say they're all into, it's a gardening show, and you can sell them gardening stuff, you may make enough money to actually sustain the program. So I think we're going to I see a pretty cool world where we'll have, all this sort of high budget Netflix, Amazon, network HBO stuff going on. And then there'll also be a lot of sort of much more niche content that's able to pay for itself.
I think
I
also.
can't wait for Alan's World of Gardening. I'm
Yes.
excited.
I think also along the lines of what you're saying, people are going to have the opportunity to connect very one-to-one with their viewers in a way they never have before, and really understand what they want and need.
Also, 5 years, maybe YouTube will stop buffering. Maybe.
I have FiOS, it doesn't buffer.
Yeah, it does. Always buffers.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting close to about the 5-minute mark there. So, in the interest of fun, let us turn it over to the audience. See if anybody has any questions, which our panel here can answer. I see somebody right there. I'm gonna bring you a mic, and if you could just sort of identify yourself too, and speak right into the mic there.
Yeah, Dick Reisman from Tal Chalozin. And on your 5-year out question, what I would like to see that I've been waiting a long time for, and I'm curious whether you think it will happen, is instead of all these silos of apps where I have to know which network, which program, to have a universal companion browser. And I can decide whether I see the showrunner's content, I see an IMDb page, I see a Google search based on the scene that I'm watching, or whatever kind of content might be available, and I can select, based on my mood, or I can ignore it and just leave it on the table. Or, I suddenly want to see something, I pick it up, it knows what program I'm watching because of ACR or some other kind of synchronization. So why is that so far off, and why doesn't it happen?
Isn't that Vigil?
Yeah, we kind of do that, but,
Or Google now.
yeah.
You don't have
First
the
of all,
showrunner content.
I mean, I think you have the app. It's called a web browser, and the question is how much of the content deserves synced experiences, right? Like I can watch a hockey game and pull up sports in real time, right? Now, as Pete's comment, maybe that'll be better when it's integrated into TV. If I want to read a formula about Breaking Bad, the problem I think that we've seen, and if you look at my company's history for a second, so Vigil bought Digit, Digit bought Miso, GetGlue shut down, like we have tried the theory many different ways of, do people want really interactive experiences when they watch shows? So far, we have seen limited success. What Vigil's found works has nothing to do actually with giving you content while you watch the show. It's actually a loyalty program, and it works exceptionally well because we don't clutter it with, and now here do these 13 things where, we've got those features in there. We actually stripped them back out because people weren't using them. Right. So I actually think that personally, if I had to make a bet, I'd bet on if you want that stuff, you pull out your web browser and you go find it. And maybe there's some pointers here and there as to where's the best, but I don't see much more other than niche programming examples like sports, like kids stuff, like National Geographic specials. I mean, that sounds cool. But for Law and Order, no diss on Law and Order. No diss.
Did that answer your question?
Well, not really, because there
Well,
are.
I just
very
disagreed with you. I
successful-
answered the question. I just didn't agree
Well,
with you.
no, I think the problem is you don't have market share because you don't have showrunner content. The showrunner content is in these siloed apps, and so those people aren't using a universal app. So
Showrunner
so you have
content
such
is-
a small percentage of the potential market, it's not meaningful.
But I'll just say that the showrunner content is available on the internet, and again, the browser is just a portal
But
to
I have to
access
go
it.
search for it.
But
Make
when
it
we had
seamless, make it
integrations,
easy.
but when we had integrated with the content coming from the networks using third-party APIs, which we built into our apps, and the content was supplied by broadcasters, and I'm talking top 3 broadcasters, people still didn't come. And in those native apps, they still didn't come. I'm
You
just
see,
saying,
but see,
it's been
I'll
built
argue
and
the,
they
I'll
haven't
argue the
come.
reverse. Is that
Please.
if you have, and this is something we had sort of come up, if you have basically a program guide, your basic electronic program guide, the thing that allows you to change channels and do all that, and that had a layer of interactivity of it. In other words, when I picked it up, it was it was channels 2 through 2000, whatever, and then once I selected whatever show I was watching, then the showrunner created second screen content would be there for me if I wanted it, but it would essentially serve as a program guide. Is that what you're sort of
Yeah, it's
asking?
seamless.
Yeah.
It's like-
Okay. So yeah,
look at-
that I would love
Here's
to see.
the example. Look
Yeah.
at online
We did
20
it.
years ago. You had AOL and CompuServe, and hardly anybody used them. Then you had a universal web browser, and anybody could go anywhere with one click and suddenly it exploded.
You know, I'm teaming up with him because I think with iOS 8, look what happens. You do a search, you get Wikipedia, you get a website, you get a restaurant, you get an app, and then you look at your friend that, you know. So I actually think it's being done now, and it would be interesting when you do Spotlight or whatever it may be. It's actually serving you relevant content. I don't know if you have an iPhone, but it's sort of doing that in a weird way right now. Do you notice that? Like you put in a topic or you're searching on your friend and it will have the same name as a restaurant down the street or whatever it is. So it's sort of going down that path.
Technology is there.
Yeah, the technology is there.
The industry has to decide to
Yeah.
work together to make it happen.
I think the
instead
hardest
of
part
fighting
is
each other.
what do you put in there, right? Like what deal
Let
do
the
you?
user decide.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Some people will want a lot, some won't.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I just got the sign that it's time for drinks.
Drinks.
So thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Thank you for sticking
Tracy
through.
got one already.
Thank you to the Chaim. Thank you to
Chaim.
the panel. You
Happy
guys were great.
Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Hanukkah.
I hope you enjoyed the show.